This video is an exploration of a 2-mile section of the old Woodhead Line. Starting at the eastern approach of the Woodhead tunnels, we make our way down through the site of Dunford Bridge Station and down to Hazlehead. We look for physical remains of the old line, and we uncover many dramatic stories and incidents which have happened on this 2-mile section of line since its opening in 1845.
So come and join us on another path to the past.
So Dawn, the site of the original Dunford Bridge Railway Station.
Really? It's such a beautiful, quiet spot, so it must have been quite a small, peaceful station?
Well, you'd think so, but it was actually on the Sheffield to Manchester line, which opened in 1845. And as we'll show you during the course of this video, this was a really busy station for the transporting of goods between those two big cities. And it was also the site of several incidents which may be of interest to the railway historian.
Hard to believe, isn't it?
But we have not one, but two stations. This was the site of station number 1, and then behind us we have the site of station number 2, built in 1954 when the new Woodhead Tunnel was opened, when this line was electrified. So yes, 1845, a momentous year in the history of the sleepy hamlet of Dunford Bridge, because work had been going on the other side of the Pennines to bring the line from Manchester out to a place called Dinting. Meanwhile, work was going on to bring the line from Sheffield down there all the way out here. And in the summer of 1845, the first train came out of Sheffield and all the way up to Dunford Bridge, carrying some of the directors of what was then the Sheffield, Ashton-under Line and Manchester Railway. And when they alighted at Dunford Bridge Station, just a few yards to our right, they had a lavish celebration in the Stanhope Arms, which is where we're just walking up to now. And we know for definite that first ever railway journey from Sheffield up to here took 55 minutes. So Stanhope Arms, which was just behind this wall, is now a private residence, so we're not going to film somebody's house, but obviously for many years it was a public house. So as well as being the site of a celebration here, one of the enterprising landlords of the Stanhope Arms, I think in the 1860s, arranged for half train fares. If you came out here, you could then have a picnic, some sort of celebration there, and then go back to your home. It was also the site of more sombre moments. There were quite a few inquests there held of people who had been killed on the railway in this area where Dunford Bridge was the nearest station. So a place of celebration and happiness, but also a very sombre place, a place where tragedies, or the stories behind the tragedies, were unveiled. Yeah, called the Stanhope Arms because a lot of this land around here belonged to the Spencer Stanhope family, who also owned Cannon Hall in Barnsley, and a lot of these tracks that lead off from where the railway line was, one up here, they're not tracks to farmers' fields. These were originally tracks used where Spencer Stanhopes held shooting parties, and they'd take their guests up onto the moors to shoot grouse. In fact, Dawn, when we're running out here now, we often see pheasants further down the line, don't we, hopping across?
We do indeed, yeah.
Probably descendants of the pheasants that were shot by the Spencer Stanhope family and guests back in the 1840s, 50s and 60s.
So tell us a little bit more about the building of the line, John.
Yeah, when I look at railway lines like this, I'm not just interested in what we can see now, I'm interested in how it came into being. So I found out that the contractor for a 2-mile section of line between Dunford Bridge and Hazlehead down there. Quick note on pronunciation. The station along from Dunford Bridge was actually called Hazlehead, or locally Hazlehead. And I found that on the local forum, so thank you to everybody who pointed that out to me. And I apologise for future iterations of saying Hazlehead during the course of this video. Was put out to contract, and whoever bid and won that contract was responsible for all the bridges, cuttings and embankments and sidings on that section of the line. So this one was down to Mr. Nicholson. So yes, Dunford Bridge Station was just a couple of hundred yards from the infamous Woodhead Tunnel. So the first tunnel was opened in 1845, a momentous piece of civil engineering. I think I'm right in saying it was the longest tunnel in the UK or Europe. Then because of the success of the line, a second tunnel was opened in 1852. I think between them, directly those tunnels claimed the lives of 60 navvies.
Weren't they called hellholes?
They were called hellholes. In fact, well, there was a separate video on the building of those tunnels. We'll visit the remains of the station. On the other side of the tunnel, out at Woodhead, But yeah, a big history at Dunford Bridge, because during the building of a third tunnel, which was opened in the mid-1950s when this line was electrified, there was a whole village up on top of what became the third tunnel. 1,000 people, a cinema, hospitals, all sorts of huts. But yeah, we'll do a separate video on the Woodhead tunnels, or as Dawn says, the hell holes.
Isn't that quite common, or wasn't that quite common, to have villages built around the building of these lines?
Yeah, and not just the lines, the reservoirs too. We've made 2 recent videos about local reservoirs and looked at the temporary tin towns that were erected, and these were proper communities, as I say, with cinemas, hospitals, chapels, even schools on occasions.
You kind of wonder why they sort of were then dismantled, because obviously people had built their lives around those areas.
I think they were a very migrant workforce, so they'd spend maybe a decade or so on a particular project, a reservoir, a railway line, a railway station, and then because of the continuing expansion of Britain's industry and the needs to support that, they then move on to another project.
That makes sense.
Yeah, thank you. I'm glad it makes sense. If you're enjoying the content on this video, please consider giving it a like.
And if you'd like to consider subscribing, it's absolutely free.
We're a new channel on YouTube looking to expand and bringing you videos about all types of history. I think what we've got there is the back of some good sidings. So as well as the 2 lines coming in and out of Dunford Bridge, there were good sidings on this side, the downside going up to Manchester, and on that side, the upside, going up to Sheffield.
A nice little flow of water now.
There is indeed. Yeah, a very peaceful area. We run up here a lot, but having dug into the research and the history of this place, it was actually a booming, thriving place for, about 100 years. Now we've got this on the area where there was the goods siding, I think. And if you have a dig around in the undergrowth, you can see some remains of that siding, also the old post which marked the boundary of the railways area, and some tensioners in there, and various bits of concrete in the ground. So as well as the 2 sidings on the main side of the line, a little bit further down, there were some good sidings where coal wagons that have been brought up from the pits of South Yorkshire, from the Barnsley and Doncaster, up through here. Coal taken on into Manchester to power the industries there. The coal wagons coming back were then sorted in some sidings we'll pass by in a minute, and then returned to their private coal mining owners, because most coal mines were under private ownership. Well, all coal mines were under private ownership until the nationalisation of the post-war Labour government in 1948.
Yeah, I'm just
Dawn's going to look at some water now.
Going to take some pictures.
Yeah, I think we've got the River Don down there, from which Dunford Bridge takes its name.
So did the railway have any effect on Dunford Bridge itself?
Yeah, they actually had to build 6 railway workers' cottages. I'll put a picture up and I'll show on the drone footage where these would have been. So there were signalmen lived there and porters. So yeah, another little community came up to Dunford Bridge when the original station was opened in 1845. Got a lovely description of it being mock Elizabethan style. It was in the process of being built when the railway was opened. So they opened the line, then the stations came shortly afterwards.
But are they the ones that are up there now? There's houses at the back.
No, they're more modern. The cottages that used to belong to the railway on Wimbledon Road have long gone. I think they were demolished when the new tunnel came in 1954. We've also got a description of when the line was opened, of a row of navvy cottages leading up to the line. It's a really good resource that in 1845 a Sheffield independent journalist accompanied the first journey up here. So all the way from Sheffield, bridge houses, all the way up here we've got a description of every part of the lines. We'll be using all that in subsequent episodes as we go from Dunford Bridge all the way into Sheffield, looking at each part of this line. Yeah, so peaceful today, but, well, within living memory, until this line closed, there was all sorts of sorting sidings going on over there. There were coal trains thundering up and down here multiple times a day, passenger trains. So it really was one of the backbones of the railway network in the country. It was part of the Great Central Line in the 1920s. So yeah, really busy railway here, but very little left of it today. certainly on this part of the line. We found so many stories associated with Dunford Bridge Station, it really seems to have been a place of very dramatic incidents. The first one occurred in October 1845, just a couple of months after the line opened. A cow had wandered onto the line, it got in the way of the train, the cow was killed, the train was derailed, and there were many injuries and delays caused by that first incident on this line. In 1847, some drunken abuse on a train led to a passenger being put in a solo compartment at Dunford Bridge, and then his body mysteriously disappearing soon afterwards. We did make a separate video about that incident earlier in the year. In 1875, an unnamed navvy was hit by a train at the entrance of the tunnel near the station. His body sliced in two, his legs remained by the tunnel, the rest of his body was found in the tunnel. 1881, a railway labourer by the name of Thomas Marsh was hit by a coal train coming up from Penistone towards Manchester, and he was killed instantly. 1886, a wagon inspector by the name of George Scorer dropped his hammer under a wagon, went to retrieve it. The wagon rolled over his legs. He was taken to Sheffield Infirmary, rallied enough to speak to his wife, but then died. 1889, a passenger by the name of Henry Milner got out of the wrong side of the train at Dunford Bridge and was knocked and killed by a passing train on the other side of the line. Something slightly different here. In May 1914, two young women were seen to leave the train at Dunford Bridge and walk up to Upper Windledon Reservoir, which you can see at the bottom of this map. Now later, a bomb was found near the valve house at the reservoir. The ladies walked up this road and then returned to the railway station later. It was assumed that this was part of a suffragette plot, the Reservoir Outrage it was called. But investigations throughout the year came to nothing, and I think it was a case of what we'd call these days fake news. 1925, Sam Fenton, a 60-year-old signal fitter who lived at Don Street in Penistone, was knocked down by a train at the east end of the platform. He was a well-known character in Penistone, being part of the town's music festival, sadly mourned, and his funeral was attended by many railway workers. 1935 saw a double collision. A goods train hit the buffers and then a passenger train struck the goods train, which you can see here. Fortunately, no fatalities, just a lot of damage to the platform. So on one side we've got quite a gentle slope, but on this side, Mr. Nicholson and his navvies must have had quite a job. So yeah, coming from Dunford Bridge down to Hazlehead, the first bridge going over the line we come to is just over 2 miles down there, but there was a bridge shown on some of the older maps just a few hundred yards down here. In fact, this looks like a natural place for a bridge crossing the railway, a gate there, so might be some crossing here when the line was opened in the 1840s. But I guess that went when this line was lifted. Well, it closed down in 1981. I think the track was lifted a few years later, about 1986.
Yeah, seems a bit of a waste that, doesn't it? Closing a line between two major cities.
Yeah, I mean, of all the railways that were closed in the years from sort of 1963 onwards, this has got to be one of the most illogical. I mean, in 1954, it was the first major line to be electrified. You know, it goes between Sheffield and Manchester. It takes in Penistone, which was a hub of industrial activity. Yeah, so to spend all that money in the mid-50s, drilling a new tunnel down at Thurgerland, a new tunnel up at Dunford Bridge going through to Woodhead, all the investment of the electrification going in it, and it runs for what, 27 years or so, then it's closed. Yeah. Long-term thinking. I mean, we don't complain because we live near here. As I say, we run and walk on this frequently. It's a lovely social resource for the people who live around here, and people travel out to use it. But boy, in terms of forward thinking for industrial strategy and network transport strategy, doesn't bear thinking about. I said there's not much left to see along here, but if you're eagle-eyed, occasionally you can spot through the undergrowth some old cable carriers there for when this line was electrified. A piece of concrete, maybe that held up a marker post. I think Dawn's just spotted another fragment of the old electrified line here.
There's actually quite a bit of it all the way along.
Oh yeah.
And here, really overgrown here. Whoops. Yeah.
Abandoned.
Mm-hmm. Here, there's really like
That is one of the posts where the metal post coming up and the electrified cables will be carried across the line. So I'm thinking through here for the site of the sorting sidings. When we're up top there, I took some drone footage and I think I could see remains of the earthworks here. An electricity substation over there, which I believe I saw on a video we were looking at of this line when it was in operation in its final years.
Dunford substation is visible also on the right.
So when these sorting sidings were built around the turn of the 19th into the 20th century, I think there were 4 separate landowners where the railway company, Great Central Railway, had to buy land off people. So I think that's the time where the bridge that used to come across here became defunct, because that land was no longer used as farmland or somebody's private land. It became owned by the Great Central Railway. That bits of coal still left from the days where coal was loaded in and out of wagons here.
It's quite a wide area over here, and you can actually see like the rise and fall in the land.
Yeah, I think it's actually 16 lines deep, those sorting sidings. So say a massive undertaking where, yeah, they're called sorting sidings because when the wagons came back from the Manchester side, they were all higgledy-piggledy belonging to different colliery owners, so they had to be sorted in the sorting sidings and sent back to the rightful owners who had collieries down in the Barnsley, Doncaster, sort of South Yorkshire area.
This is absolutely beautiful, and I have to say it's one of my favourite parts of what is now the Trans-Pennine Trail. Glorious, and on a day like today, wow, it's just amazing.
Yeah, you get the vibe of it being really peaceful, rural, but as we're showing, there are many incidents that happened between Hazlehead Station, this down there, and Dunford Bridge, back where we started. That shows that work on the railways during the period of this being an operational line between 1845 and 1981 wasn't so idyllic and pleasant.
No, there was lots of fatalities, wasn't there? I tend to call it the ghosts of the Trans-Pennine Trail.
Yeah, I mean, every few hundred yards down here, I can find a story of some tragedy, some suicide, some fatal accident, some gruesome accident that left somebody disfigured. So yeah, every time we come up here, I tend to remember the people whose lives were associated here as workers, as victims of people of tragedy. They're all worth remembering in your thoughts as you come up and down what is now this lovely idyllic setting. So just looking through here, we can see the old British rail post there and some tensioner lines which showed the edge of where the railway property ended, and well, whoever owns those moors began. It was the Spencer Stanhopes back in the 19th century. I don't know who owns it now. Yeah, because this is such a remote area and because these sorting sidings were so large and required such a large workforce, actually on top of the slope up there were some railway cottages built, again in the early part of the 1900s I think, and I think there's 19 cottages still there and they're still in use today as...
Aren't they some kind of alternative living? I'm not sure really what it's called.
Yeah, I think in 1974 a commune, group of people, took it over, and by and large it's been there ever since. So there's a community there who live on communist, I think, lifestyle, commune. Fair play to them, you know, they've got that nice little contained, almost little village up there, and yeah, repurposing and reusing railway cottages that might have been knocked down otherwise. Yeah, so these sorting sidings, I read it was really marshy land and it took them longer to construct them than they actually expected. It took about 3 years. Now up on the moors there, and if you can see, they've got a sheep guarding it, there is a brick construction. I think that's something to do with gathering water together so it can be drained under the line here instead of coming down onto the railway line and causing all sorts of problems and flooding, and for all the sidings that were there. If anybody does know and can confirm that or contradict it, then please comment below. Looks like some kind of penfold down there, but this is absolutely our favourite part of this section of the line. Let's look at it. Yeah, you can see another quite substantial post that mark the boundary, the railway's territory there. So just coming to the end of the first part of our exploration of the old Woodhead Line between Dunford Bridge and Sheffield.
So as we're coming to the end of this first part of our journey, you can see we're 2 miles down from Dunford Bridge, and it's actually quite changed in terms of the steepness either side of the trail.
Mr. Nicholson and his workers, again would have had the work cut out, cutting through these rocks, maybe using explosives or pick and shovels to get the cutting on this part of the line. So yeah, we're just going to finish the journey here at this bridge. I think it's called Coat Lane Bridge. We'll just go and check that.
Coat, yeah.
There we go, Coat Bank Bridge. Carlicoats. And this was called the Carlicoats contract, the one that Mr. Nicholson secured and built. So yes, we've run under this bridge hundreds of times, and I've never known until I did the research for this video that in 1877 an engine driver by the name of John Woodward left too much of his body outside the line of the train. His body struck this bridge and he was killed. So every time I run under this bridge now, I shall remember poor John Woodward, who ended his life at this very spot in 1877. So that completes part one of our exploration of the Woodhead Line between Dunford Bridge and Sheffield, its history and its stations. Hazlehead Station is just a couple of hundred yards down there, and that's where we'll begin the second part of this journey. If you have liked this video, please give it a like on YouTube. It helps with our algorithms and helps us to grow as a channel. And if you'd like to see our further exploration of this line and our other history-based videos, then please subscribe to the channel. It's absolutely free and would love to have you along.
So don't forget to join us next time, where every journey begins with a path to the past.